pleasure for me to be here. Living in Singapore is great when we actually have events that are here and we don't have to travel around the region to get to them. So I'm pleased to present to you Sigfox and tell you a little bit about our mission and how we collaborate with partners around the world to engage the world of IoT. So how many of you were fans as children of Superman or Superwoman or a superhero? Sure, they were strong. Maybe we had one or two. Oh, only one or two hands. Surprising. Sure, they were strong. They could fly. What really fascinated me as a kid was the fact that they would really know what was going on in the physical world, even far away. They could anticipate an incident before it happened. What if we could become Supermen and Superwomen? What if we knew what was happening in the physical world, even far away? What if we could know what was going to happen next and affect the outcome of that result? So I'll ask you to dream a little bit about that and how we at Sigfox are transforming the physical world into the digital world. So how do we become Supermen and Superwomen? We have to know what's happening in the physical world around us. We can do that, particularly in today's world, by digitizing where things are, what's happening with them, and the things that are going on around them. We need to digitize the physical world. Digitization leads to new services. You've all witnessed what's happened to the music industry. Once we had digitized music, we went from LPs, those are vinyl records to those that are too young to know, CDs, streaming services. Music consumption and innovation around the music industry have really sparked huge disruption in the music industry itself. And that's just one example. Think about the Model T with Ford. Think about IBM and Apple with the PC and with the smartphone. Talking about smartphones, well, there you have your first sensors. Thanks to the wide deployment of smartphones, we now have sensors all around us, all the time. We can collect data on other people, ourselves, what's happening around them. We can use GPS location to determine the services that we provide them, things like Waze and Google or Tinder. We can use the sound for other services like Shazam. What was that song that I was just listening to? This wealth of new data really is enabling us to collect information from smartphones, and it's sparked some amazing innovations and disruption in the digital world. So we know for a fact that the more data we collect, the more services we can build. We've seen it every day and all around us. I think Reed Anderson this morning mentioned that we've got lots and lots of information. Now we have to figure out what to do with it. Well, do we have enough information? One of our challenges is being able to attract new data sources so people can become smarter and safer and more efficient in the way in which they operate. So really, this is the promise of the Internet of Things. It's driven by the value of data. We've talked already in this session about unleashing the value of that data. Lots and lots of data. So why hasn't the mass adoption of IoT taken off? We've talked about it for the last 3 years at this event in Singapore. We've really talked about it for over a decade. We can talk about internet connectivity in many, many ways. So there are thousands of uses today that are making use of existing technology, expensive devices like the smartphone, complex integrated systems to deliver high-value data. The real hurdles are made up of a few key elements. In terms of mass adoption, and you have high energy consumption devices. You have to charge your smartphone several times a day if it's used actively. You have complex systems, complex devices and networks, and complex solutions to analyze that data. So ultimately, the cost of capturing data, the thing that drives IoT, is often higher than the value of the data itself. So we need to have a way to get much cheaper and much simpler sensors that can be put into the hands of the physical world, sensors on everything that will allow us to collect new data more efficiently and allow services to become more widely available. I think we've heard already today that the Internet of Things is many different things to different people. We think of it in terms of the value pyramid. At the top of that pyramid, you have all kinds of data capture, which make use of real-time connectivity, command and response relationships between the network and the device, high bandwidth and low latency so that they're available all the time. And these are using the traditional technologies. GSM, LTE, we hear about NB-IoT coming. But you also have local area network devices, Wi-Fi and Zigbee and Bluetooth. The Sigfox network and the Sigfox solutions are focused on what we consider to be the vast majority of IoT devices, unleashing the vast data value in mass deployment. So we focus our network, we focus our sensors and the solutions on collecting these small amounts of data on a massive scale, collectively, so that enterprises can unleash the value of that data. So as you move towards mass deployment, you start to have to make choices. You've got to make choices ultimately to have simple sensors that can connect companies to their sensors in an easy way, in an optimal way, with a combination of the lowest possible energy consumption, the lowest possible cost, global reach and scalability and simplicity. It doesn't mean that these other connectivity solutions are any worse or that they are more cost-effective makes them unusable. It means that if you look at the whole pyramid, any IoT solution may make use of many forms of connectivity. But if you have maximum use of these 4 key elements, you can really move to unleashing the real power of data in the real world. So let's talk about cost for a moment. The cheaper the hardware in the sensor, the more sensors we'll be able to deploy. Mr. Kumar has already talked about the value and the cost. It is a big factor. If you've got a $50 device, you can connect something and you really only see a high-end gadget. Or think about your BMW. That's a high-cost sensor. We need to push the price much lower in order for everything to be able to have a sensor built into it. So today there are some cloud services that are connected to sensors that are less than $2. Sometimes those are Wi-Fi based sensors, so you have a global reach issue, you only have a local area network, but it's possible to extend that to be a global device. So it's becoming a no-brainer to start adding sensors to any kind of physical object. So the topic of the session here is about collaboration. We at Sigfox recognize that we're one small piece in a much broader value chain. We're providing a globally available, low-cost network, but we require chipsets. We have to work with the silicon vendors. We have to work with the module makers and OEMs and ODMS manufacturers. We have to work with the platform providers and work with the vertical application providers to bring that end-to-end value. Otherwise, there's no use for the network. Let's face it, when somebody's looking for an IoT solution, the first thing they don't think about is not connectivity. The first thing they think about is probably not the device itself. It's what is the problem I'm trying to solve? What am I going to do with data that I'm going to collect? So if you're looking at cost, you have to look at total cost of ownership, not just the network, not just the device. It's how am I going to get ROI? How am I going to get that value back into my business? So we've developed that community of partners, working with the device makers, working with the platform providers, providing them with access to our technology royalty-free, because we want to put that technology in the hands with as many companies as possible so that they can build devices and platforms and applications that connect to our network and release the value which is in the data itself. So by working with these partners, we've been able to accelerate the reduction of cost. If we'd not worked collaboratively, we might have seen cost take 5 or 6 years to reach the $2 or below $2 price for a module. In arranging some partnerships last year and underwriting some costs, Sigfox has enabled us to get to a below $2 module cost for connected Sigfox devices. So the results are obvious. We now have a broad partnership. In the last 12 months, we have over 30 silicon and module manufacturers that are working with us installing Sigfox connectivity. In just over 18 months to 2 years, we have over 165 devices and solution providers that are delivering Sigfox-enabled and Sigfox-ready compliant solutions, being able to connect to our network and offer not only local solutions, but global solutions. And working with our channel partners, we're able to give them the connectivity capabilities that they deliver value to their customers as products as a service or software as a service, as we've talked about earlier today. So there's a real community here working to deliver the value of the Internet of Things. And Sigfox itself works through a distribution model. We have over 30 partners today worldwide that are providing connectivity to the global Sigfox network. So we have to have the device and the ecosystem and the partners, but what about the network? We need to have a network that can listen to low-cost, low-energy solutions. A simple use network that can enable the simplest possible sensors to say what's happening in the real world. Again, it's only through collaboration that we're able to realize the benefits of this mass IoT, bringing them to market, and this is really what Sigfox has been designed and built for. We've got a rather novel approach to that. So we talk about adding sensors to the physical objects without having to charge batteries constantly. So we have batteries that have to be lasting years or decades, not just hours or days. We're even seeing some first use cases around energy harvesting. This will be a fundamental paradigm shift in the release of devices for the physical world. So if we have a longer battery life, we can deploy more sensors. And we have a patented technology that works not only in the sensors, but on the network to minimize the power consumption needed to send and receive messages and to prolong the life of the devices themselves. So this maximum power efficiency really creates a high degree of predictability in the life of the sensors, and that means lower operating costs. So traditional networks were built for really internet-connected devices that would run an IP stack with the addressable internet with sophisticated protocols to handle multimedia exchanges. And these networks really require sensors to manage a lot of very complex data, and they have to have expensive sensors, short battery life, and the complexity really has to move away from the sensors to the network itself. And we can live with a connectivity that doesn't allow multimedia because it's a different type of use case, a different application for our mass IoT devices. We just need to capture the simple data, 12 bytes or less of information, such as temperature or humidity or water content, maybe a GPS coordinate, something as stupid as car keys. They're just transmitting a radio signal without actually connecting to the network. And therefore, they're very cheap, they're very low cost, they're very efficient in terms of energy, and they last for ages on a small battery, even this device here. So astrophysicists do something that's quite interesting, and it's really been the inspiration for Sigfox and our network. Instead of having a very advanced, expensive radio telescope, or ears, we kind of call them that, they deploy a large volume of ears. So gathering small radio telescopes to create one big virtual radio telescope, which allows us to increase the sensitivity to sensors. And they use big data software analytics to virtually transform all of these small ears into one gigantic ear listening. So think of Sigfox network more like a giant radio telescope than a traditional wireless network. In other words, they increase the sensitivity of the ear by having more listening points. For those radio techies in the room, we're really talking about massive MIMO or large array telescopes. So what you've got now is data crunching, really to extract messages that are coming from sensors and devices into the cloud and extracting it from the noise that you see in low spectrum or LPWAN spectrum. So when you perform your network logic in the cloud, you don't have to make the sensors complex. They can be simple devices. You can add new features to the network and improve the performance through simple software upgrades. So the antennas are essentially dumb ears that are using the smart stuff in the software. For Sigfox, it was mentioned, Charles Reed Anderson asked a couple of questions this morning. How quickly can we deploy globally? Our network is one global network. It's not just a national network. You don't have to have roaming agreements between partners. You don't have to have multiple standards by country. It's one network. And to expand it, you simply put more dumb ears and increase the coverage. We do that with our partners. And there's no impact on the rest of the system. It's still one cloud. So that roaming goes away, that configuration, that pairing that you need if a device is mobile. Today, we've got you covered. We're in 32 countries today. We're on track to reach 60 countries by the end of next year. That scalability is something that has happened very quickly. Just over a year ago, we were only in 10 countries. So we're moving quickly through our distributor partnership network to deploy in additional countries. In Asia Pacific alone, we started with 0 countries just over a year ago, And now we're in 9 territories in the region, including Singapore. The Singapore network being deployed by our partner Unibiz is already at roughly 25% of coverage of Singapore, and in the next 6 months we'll have 100% coverage of Singapore network. So it's a very simple, very rapid deployment network. That 60-country target for us represents roughly 85% of world GDP and billions of people in terms of population. And that means that our partners, the ecosystem partners, can quickly see what their total available market is. They can build to scale because they see one global network. So it's the quickest, really the quickest network rollout, and admittedly for us it's the simplest. We also are often positioned as competitors to 4G networks or NB-IoT, which is hard because it's not actually here yet. Often LoRa is mentioned as a competitor. But Sigfox is really designed to complement all of the existing wireless technologies, from the local area networks of Wi-Fi, Zigbee, and Bluetooth, to the other wireless protocols of cellular or GSM networks, as well as those that are coming into the marketplace like NB-IoT. Our vision really is Sigfox connectivity has to be ubiquitous like Zigbee or Bluetooth or Wi-Fi as a connectivity option. And then it's available immediately into a device, whether it's utilized or not. So limiting Sigfox to LPWAN market is a mistake. We see it as a backup form of connectivity in some cases where 3G signals are jammed in a security situation. A Sigfox signal is very difficult, if not impossible, to jam because of the signal hopping that we utilize in our spectrum. It's used to provide a backup to sending passwords out to Wi-Fi based devices to reset them in remote locations. We can use it as an uplink for satellite. We can use geolocation when a GPS device is too expensive. Think about a pallet for shipping goods. A pallet costs $25 to manufacture. You're not going to put a $60 or $100 GPS device to track that pallet. But a $5 sensor to know where it is, roughly, between warehouse and distribution point or factory. This makes it more economic. It makes it more viable as a complement to other forms of connectivity. We see it across all use cases. We are in some respects agnostic to the industry because a simple sensor which is measuring humidity or measuring temperature or measuring location is not necessarily specific to an industry, but the use cases are very wide. We see it in the pharmaceutical applications. There's a company manufacturing inhalers for asthma sufferers. Those asthma sufferers don't always use the device properly. They don't pump it enough to get the medicine into their lungs, or they run out when there's a crisis. We're working with companies to develop very inexpensive sensors that will measure the pumps and measure the volume of the canister so that alert can come to your hand phone to tell you to use it properly or to refill when you become low. That same sensor can measure the pump in the perfume bottle. So ladies, you'll be able to get your refill before you go to that nice big party. We see the same applications for motion detection and temperature sensors. A very large global retailer came to one of our partners and said, you know, we lose about $10 million a year in spoiled strawberries in our shops. If we could find a way to inexpensively measure the temperature, the humidity, and the motion of those strawberries as they move from the field to the processing plant, to the factory, to the distribution warehouse, and ultimately to the retailer, we can find where in that cold chain we're receiving damage to those strawberries. And just a 10% savings, $1 million of spoiled strawberries, can pay for the solution in less than 9 months. So enabling that very low cost chain of device, monitoring, application makes it possible to do that, and that's only one fruit. So we're really entering a new world where the possibilities of this network are endless. With sensor prices below $2 and years to decades of battery life, soon with energy harvesting coming along, there really are going to be no limits. So we see it's going to be easy to integrate connectivity everywhere. For me, there's not a single day that I'm not surprised, such as the asthma story or the strawberries, where I don't learn something new about ways to use the Internet of Things with Sigfox when you really lower those costs and make it lower the barriers to entry. So it's a new generation of connectivity. I invite you all to be supermen and superwomen. The physical world will be connected to the cloud, and with collaboration with partners, we can really remain successful as new members of this connected community. We invite you to visit us, join the revolution, visit us at the Sigfox stand here, where we're here with a number of our partners demonstrating devices, and with our connectivity partners, Sigfox with Unibiz and Thigstra. Thank you very much.